episode, another lesson in personal finance. We're about to go live, just doing a camera check right now, about to go live with the University of Houston at the Bauer College of Business. This is week number 2, assignment number 2, lesson number 2, budgets and accountability. So let's see, it looks like it's working. Let me jump on over into the Zoom, and the Zoom meeting has begun. Let's go ahead and admit some folks. Okay. Good morning, good morning. Good morning and welcome. If you're joining us on Zoom, welcome. If you would be so kind as to give me a sound check, I would appreciate it. We're just getting started. It is 10 a.m. on, look at that, I don't have a watch on. I broke my Apple Watch while I was working in the yard. Who cares, right? A new one is coming today, so I will be back on time after I get my new Apple Watch. Yeah, I did buy the old Generation 3. It actually cost $50 more to get a new one with a new band and a new charger. $50 more for a new one than to get the old one fixed. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I have an Apple Watch instead of a, Wall Street official Rolex. So I like that. Okay, everybody's joining up. Looks like somebody's trying to call me, and I'm going to cancel that. I turned off my phone. It may be a student. I'm not sure. But at any rate, welcome, everyone. Can I get a sound check, please? Will somebody just let me know you can hear me instead of just seeing my... Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Hope you guys had a good week. I did some, well, I graded some of your homework assignments last night before I went to bed, and I graded many of them on Friday. So thank you to those of you who turned your assignments in by Friday at 3 p.m. Some of you turned it in 3 or 4 o'clock on Friday, and so I got a bit of a late start on Friday, so you got lucky if you turned your assignment in Friday at 4 or 5, maybe even 6 o'clock, I'm not sure. But at some point on Friday, I cleaned out my queue, and those students who had already submitted your assignments, you got the extra 20% bump on your grade. So I really hope that you will all consider turning your assignments in early. Again, you get 20% extra bump in the points for that assignment, and that really adds up over the semester. In addition to that, you get the opportunity to make corrections and submit those corrections by Tuesday at 10 a.m. when the assignments are actually due. If you turn in any corrections by Tuesday at 10 a.m., you will receive not only the full points for the assignment, assuming you did everything correctly, but you'll get the 20% bump for turning it in early. And even though I gave you some response and said, fix this, fix that, if you fix this and you fix that and you resubmit it by Tuesday at 10 a.m., you get the extra points. It's a very generous offer. Not sure how long that's going to last, but for this semester, I'm committing to you to do that. But I really hope you will commit to try your best to turn those assignments in early. Makes a huge difference in your points. You need 950 points to get an A. Okay, so I'm rambling. I do that. The first 5 minutes, I'm going to ramble, talk about anything that comes to mind that I think I want to mention. For those of you who are here on time, you get the benefit of my rambles. And for those of you who don't get here until 10:05 a.m., you miss my ramblings. I don't really start, as you know, I mentioned this last week, I don't really want to start teaching until 5 minutes after because a lot of students show up a few minutes late. So we have a 5-minute grace period at 10:05 a.m. If you didn't know this, I won't admit you after 5 minutes after the hour. So if you try to chime in at 10:05 a.m., you'll get in. But if it's 10:06 a.m., chances are you won't. If it's 10:10, you're going to have to watch it on YouTube or Facebook. We are streaming live right now on YouTube and Facebook. So for those of you who are joining us on the YouTube or Facebook, welcome. Glad you're here. This is an asynchronous course, so you do not have to be at the Zoom meeting, but I'm so thrilled. We have what I consider a full house. We have a pretty good number of students in the Zoom meeting. So welcome to you, a special welcome to you, because today I'm going to ask you to help me with this lesson. So I posted this article, I guess, Budgets and Accountability. It's essentially the same content that you will see in your assignment in Blackboard. There's more in Money Study Group that you're going to need to access, but this will help us with the lesson today, the lecture. And if you're listening, you will get or watching, you will get some insights about this week's lesson that you won't get if you don't attend the Zoom meeting, which, by the way, is required. So it is 10:05. Let's get started. Again, if you have any questions, I will try to remind you of this every class session, to use the chat to put in that you are here. I'm going to admit one more student. Use the chat to put your name and the time that you joined, and so we'll do that every beginning of each class. I'd like to have a record of the students who are attending the Zoom meeting. The students who are listening or watching on YouTube or Facebook, you're going to need to confirm that you've watched this some other way. Ideally, many of you are posting comments that you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, and that's great. I appreciate that. I hate to ask you to do that, publicly. But many of you are doing it, and that's fine. If you want to keep doing that, it's a great way to let me know you're watching. And I read those comments. So, sorry about that. Okay. So let's get started. We're going to talk about budgets and accountability today. A big part of personal finance is budgets and accountability. So some of you are accounting students, and typically you have a huge advantage in this course because one of the big assignments, one of the major pieces of personal finance is budgeting or cash flow. And so if you are an accounting major, that is something that you're very familiar with. But others of you are more like me, not accountants, not into accounting, don't really love budgeting. And so for those of us who try to resist as much as possible any rules, boundaries, or limitations related to how we spend our money, budget is a bad word. It's not exactly something we love. And so, as we hopefully all know, budgets are a big part of any business. They're also budgets, accountability, accounting is also a pretty important part of any organization, whether it's a business or a nonprofit. But organization can also mean you and your partner, or me and my wife, my family needs some way to be accountable for the money that's going out and the money that's coming in and the money that's going out and the money that's coming in. And we call that a budget. So we're going to talk about budgets. This week, the focus is budgeting. And I like to say budgets and accountability because the budget is a tool. It's a thing. It's an activity, maybe. It's a spreadsheet, maybe. It's a budget is a thing. But accountability, that's kind of something else. It's a different idea, and it's a very important part of financial success, is just being accountable for your money. So I'm going to ask you to do that with a budget, with a spending plan, with a spending tracker. Like last week, one of your assignments or part of your assignment was to select a tracker, something that you use to track your spending. And most of you selected something that works on your phone. like mint.com or your bank app. Most of you said, I'm going to use my bank app. Hooray for you. So many of you said, I'm going to use my bank app. Some of you said, I'm going to use mint.com. Mint.com is one of my favorite free resources out there on the internet. If you're not familiar with mint.com, it basically is a tool that they make available free. Banks provide the tool. Mint.com is sponsored by and supported by the banking industry. So one of the things you will experience if you do use mint.com, a couple of things. One is you'll get very good security because the banking industry really kind of built mint.com, and they use the same kind of security. Number two is you're going to get what we call aggregation. Aggregation is a very important technology, a very important component of financial planning. If you have multiple accounts, you have 2 credit cards, you have a credit union, you have a brokerage account like E-Trade or Robinhood, Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Fidelity, a 401k plan, and then 3 bank accounts, and you name it. You can go on and on and on with all of these different pieces of your financial life. And so those pieces of your financial life can be represented in your mint.com accounts through aggregation. So just so you know, that is a powerful tool if you happen to be in a situation where you need to aggregate all of your accounts to show one financial snapshot. So I'm going to introduce you to the tool that I use in my company, Bayrock Financial. It's a tool called Right Capital. It has a mobile app. It's very, very similar to mint.com. In fact, it's almost identical, except you don't get the advertisements because it's a professional premium tool as opposed to a free tool, mint.com. So many of you chose Mint. That's really great. That's one of the best tools out there. I'd say most of you chose your bank app, like Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, whoever you use. And that is great too. Either way, mint.com or your bank app. Do you have a question, Mario? I saw your screen jumped up there. If anybody does have a question, feel free to ask it, or type, if you would, type in the chat box. I kind of hate the idea that I do all the talking, but that's kind of how it is. I can either try to guilt you into engaging and talking, or I can just keep going. And I've found that you're okay not talking, and I'm okay talking. So, but if you want to talk, feel free. Speak up. I'll pause. I'll listen. We'll have a conversation anytime you want. So I'm seeing that lots of students are trying to join. And one of the things, it's like 10, 12. Imagine if you're this late, you need to go back and watch on YouTube or Facebook. But the problem is, I just realized I had a student last week who told me that they get bumped out. They have bad internet. They get kicked off. And so sometimes they have to try to rejoin. And I'd hate to not admit a student who's been here, got kicked off, and try to rejoin. So one of the many challenges of teaching an asynchronous online on-demand course. Anyway, sorry, it's a distraction when I'm having to pay attention to this, but it pops up on my screen. So anyway, back to the tracker conversation. So I have 2 credit cards. Actually, I think I have 3 credit cards. One of them my wife uses for personal stuff. This one is the one that I use the most. That gives me a great rewards, like 2% gives me 2%. This is a business credit card. The reason I'm showing you those is because I carry all that around in my phone. So it's like my wallet. But when I use these credit cards, every single penny that I spend, I rarely use cash. In fact, my wife and I went on a vacation, a little getaway last weekend, or the weekend before last weekend. We went to Davis Mountains in West Texas. Beautiful place, amazing place. But the town, Davis, is Fort Davis, I think it's called. It's a tiny little town with a main street and like 5 restaurants. and they close like most of the day. They're closed. They're only open for a couple hours at meal times. We went to one of these restaurants and they didn't take credit cards. They didn't take debit cards. I don't have a debit card, but I do have credit cards, and I had no cash. So we're sitting down. We've already ordered. It was a Mexican restaurant, so they brought chips and salsa, and we had ordered some queso, hadn't come yet. And my wife noticed the sign that they did not take cash. Well, we just had no cash. Not a smart idea to go to a little town in the middle of nowhere with no cash, but we did that. Anyway, I don't use cash. I rarely use cash, although I do usually stash some cash somewhere, but I often lose my cash, which is why I'm not a big fan of cash. But I use credit cards for lots of reasons. Mainly, I love credit cards that give me a really good reward system, cash back. So that's why I chose this credit card. This is just a simple business card. I don't want you to see the number. That's why I keep moving it around. Anyway, using credit cards is a great way to track your expenses. It's an amazing thing to me how every penny I spend gets tracked and categorized. Now, I might have to do a little bit of work in my bank app if I want to tweak the categories of those expenses or that income or whatever. And you'll need to do that too with your tracking exercise this semester. But the point I'm trying to make is whether you use mint.com, where it aggregates every transaction in every account and brings it all together, or you use your bank app with one debit card, if you use the tool, if you use an app that is connected to the debit card or the credit card that you use for all of your transactions, then this assignment that you're going to do later in the semester is going to be super easy. But, however, issue with those of you who said you want to use Excel, and several of you did, I'll just tell you right up front, you may want to make a note of this. Rarely does a student who uses Excel to track their spending, rarely does that student get even half of the points that are available in this assignment. And here's why. Because one of the things that we're asking you to do this semester is to track all of your spending, every transaction. And what happens is those of you who use Mint, or you use your bank app, this exercise, this assignment is super easy. There are 3 parts. Number 1 is I want to see all the data. I want to see all of your transactions for the semester. I don't look at them. I don't care. You can blur the screen. I just want to know that you basically kept track of everything you spent this semester. And that's what I'm asking you to do. And that's why I'm asking you to select a tool, a spending tracker that will do that for you in an easy way. Mint.com, super easy. Your bank app, super easy. So that's 3 things. One is I want to see the data. I want to know that you tracked every expense. And so when you download all those transactions, it's super easy for me to tell that you did that. Number 2 is I want to see a graph that's broken out into categories of income and expenses. If you're an accounting major, what I'm saying is like, duh. But if you're not, if you're like me or a lot of folks I know, you may have to think about how are you going to make sure that your categories are set up correctly. So it's part of the process of learning how to be accountable with your money, not accountable to me or your spouse or your mom or your dad or your roommate, but accountable to yourself. And so that's one of the reasons this assignment is key this semester in personal finance. And it's one of the reasons why the choice you make about which tool you're going to use to track your spending is somewhat important. Number 1, I want to see the data. Number 2, I want to see a graph that has a good presentation of the categories of your income and your expenses. And number 3, this is my favorite part of the assignment, is I want to know at the end of the semester, after you've tracked your spending and you've looked and you've been accountable to yourself about every dime that you spent, I want to know what's your reaction. What did you learn? What did you learn about yourself? What surprised you in terms of your spending habits? I mean, that's really the point of this exercise, of this assignment. But it starts by selecting a tracker. And again, just kind of a warning, if you're going to use Excel, You're welcome to do that, but I'm telling you, rarely does a student who uses Excel get even half of the points in this assignment, because it's so easy to compare a student who used their bank app with a student who used Excel. Guess what happens? Guess what's different? You'll see. It's remarkable. But I know many of you like Excel for whatever reason. I'm not going to push back other than to say good luck with that, because it's just not typically going to work very well. So what you're going to do this week in this week's assignment is you're going to create a basic budget. And I don't really care how you do that. Like, this assignment is wide open to whatever you want to do to create your own budget. I just want to see kind of where you are in the spectrum of personal finance and being accountable in terms of a budget. And so there's so many ways to create a budget. You hopefully are already doing something that has that looks like and smells like and feels like a budget, and that's great. You just show me what you're doing and you're good to go in this assignment. But some of you are going to have to go out there and figure it out and actually create a budget for maybe the first time. And if that's you, I don't want you to feel pressured or stressed. Just do a little Google search, check out the assignment in Money Study Group, and you'll have some resources there to give you some direction so you can go and do this. But it may take you a little longer than a student who's an accounting student, obviously, or someone who's already been investing in their financial life in the way that gives them kind of a platform already of tracking their spending, being accountable for their spending, and making a budget on an ongoing basis. So if you're that student, good for you. This assignment is done. It's like you're going to be like 10 minutes and you're out of here. So that's this week's assignment. It's very simple, very basic. But the point is, with the spending tracker, that's an ongoing project. I want to make sure that you've thought about your spending tracker. So at the end of this assignment, I think I didn't include it here. I need to update this. You'll see it in your in your assignment. I actually posted some additional highlights. I want you to tell me in the class participation portion of this assignment. Attention. This is your class participation. Remember, 200 points. Every week I'm going to say, this week I want you to comment on this. And so this is it. It's basically your spending tracker. Last week you were supposed to tell me what you chose as your spending tracker, and most of you did that. Some of you forgot, and some of you I didn't even hammer you on the points. But I am going to be doing that moving forward. If you miss the class collaboration portion of the assignment, it means you missed an important part of the lesson, so don't miss this. And don't miss it in your assignment, because this week I will be deducting 10 points if you miss the class collaboration part of your assignment. So this week I want you to tell me not only what are you going to use to track your spending, but I want to know how are you going to make sure that you get all of that data. Again, if you're using a bank app or mint.com, super easy. But I want you to know how you're going to do that. So it may mean that you need to jump into your online bank, account and see where do you go to grab the data. That's how you're going to get full points on this assignment that's coming. Number 2 is the graph that has the, broken out categories. How are you going to do that? So if you're using a bank app, if you're using mint.com, it does it for you, but you have to go in and maybe tweak the categories. So I want to know that you know how to do that. You don't have to do it, just know how you're going to do it. That's your class collaboration. And there was one other piece of that you will see in your assignment, but that's going to be your class collaboration. So, all right, I want to take care of some business. We have some business to take care of, and this is where I'm going to need your, those of you who are here in the Zoom meeting, I'm going to ask you guys to help me with this part of the lecture with this part of, really, it's an important part of the semester. So I'm sure you have a certain picture in your mind or expectations for what you want from your professors, from, especially in this class with respect to personal finance. I have a suspicion that you have some expectations, and I would like to make sure that I understand what those expectations are. So the best way I know to be sure that I understand your expectations is to have this conversation. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have the expectations conversation for a few minutes, and I'm going to need your help. So with respect to your expectations of me, I want to ask you the question, just what do you have the right to expect of me? And if you would just give me a one sentence, you can either speak in the microphone or leave a chat if you're in Zoom. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, if you leave your comments, I'll read those. And by sometime this week, I will do like a summary, an expectations video summary to say, here's what your expectations are. And this whole conversation will be summarized in that video. But for now, as we get started, I need your help. So what do you have the right to expect from me as your instructor, as your professor of personal finance? In this course, in this semester, what do you have the right to expect from me? Be responsive to questions. Emma, that's a good one. I want to talk about that in a minute, but first, what else? We'll make a list. I'll make a list of your expectations. What do you have the right to expect of me? And then we'll talk about them. But first, let's get the list. That's a good one. Thank you, Emma. Who else? Be responsive to questions is the first one. What else do you have the right to expect from me as your professor, your instructor in personal finance this semester in my role at the University of Houston? What do you have the right to expect from me? Come on, there's got to be more than one. I would like everyone to give me your expectation. It tells me you're watching, you're paying attention, and getting feedback. Ignacio says getting feedback on assignments that are turned in early. Great. Ignacio, I'm gonna ask you a question about that in a minute. But first, what else? Who else? That's two out of, we have, a lot of folks in the room. Sarah says clear assignment instructions. Great. Very good. So further explanations on assignments or maybe examples. That's good, Jessica. Thoy says, I would love to discuss with Professor when I have any questions regarding assignments. Okay. And Nagan says, I expect my professor to actually care about the students by providing feedback on assignments and providing help when needed. Great. Those are some good expectations. We'll talk about those in a minute. Sahil says, to be clear and concise with assignment instructions. Very good. Anyone else? What else do you have the right to expect from me? Confidentiality of any personal or sensitive information submitted in assignments, perhaps, says Julie. I think that's good. Confidentiality of any personal or sensitive information submitted in assignments. I think that's good. We'll talk about that in a minute. Declan says having office hours where we can sit down and speak about some personal financial goals and possibly learn more on paying taxes and how to get benefits from that. Okay, that's a very interesting expectation. Declan, we'll talk about that. Anyone else? What else? What do you have the right to expect from me? Okay. Going once. Going twice. A new message. Assigning information that is useful to this course and our lives. Thank you, Chelsea. Anyone else? What do you have the right to expect from me as your instructor, your professor of personal finance, and the scope of this course this semester at the Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston? What do you have the right to expect of me? Okay, going once. Let's see. There's several more of you who haven't spoken up. And that says something about you. It says something about your role, about your participation, about your expectations, um, about you. So show me that you're paying attention and that you care enough to say, here's what I expect. I'm still waiting for some of you to do that. And for those of you who've already done that, I appreciate it. I'm going to take this list and I'm going to talk about each of these in a minute, for a minute, and then we'll move on to the next part of the expectation conversation. But first, I'm going to give everyone else a chance to tell me, what do you expect? What do you have the right to expect from me as your professor? Clear with assignment instructions and announce extra points. Okay, that's good. All right. If anyone else wants to chime in, now is a good time to do that. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, I will be looking for your comment. Feedback on our assignments with an exclamation mark, says Galilea. Very good. To be clear with instructions with assignments and being easily accessible when we have questions. Okay, man, these are some great expectations. Great expectations. I appreciate that. Parker says, I expect a professor to keep clear communication with students and respond to questions. David says, answering our questions. Shelby says, courtesy, civility, and respect in their interactions with students. That's good. Clear instructions and feedback, all caps and tons of exclamation marks. Thank you, Stan. Nalale says positive reinforcement and patience. Feedback on our assignment, says John. You know, I've heard that one a lot. That's great. This is so helpful for me. I think maybe because I'm guilting you and pressuring you to respond, I've received more responses in the last couple of minutes than I usually do when I have this conversation with students. And I really appreciate it. It's really the only way that I can even hope to meet your expectations. And I don't want to meet your expectations. I really want to exceed them. So the only way I know to try to do that is to have this conversation. So I appreciate it. It's an important way for us to start the semester. Anyone else? I don't see any more comments. So I'm going to now scroll up. I'm looking at my chat here, and I'm going to scroll up and just start reading them and talking about them. So let me see. To be responsive to questions. Emma, I'm going to ask you to clarify. And everyone who has, this is a recurring expectation. So I get a lot of questions. And I want to just be sure, Emma, that we're clear about that, what that means. Answers to questions, responsive to questions. Getting feedback on assignments that are turned in early, clear assignment instructions, further explanations on assignments, or maybe examples. Jessica, I'm not sure I understand further explanations on assignments or maybe examples. So one of the things I do is I'll do a video tutorial if there are questions that seem to be recurring. And in the context of answering questions, that's one of the ways we try to do that. Another way is through GroupMe. Students who have questions that we've already answered are available typically through GroupMe. So let me see here. I want to jump over here. I'm going to take some notes. So hopefully it's okay. I've got your expectations of me, and I think they're pretty, I don't see any of these expectations that are not reasonable. But there are a couple that may have some difficulty, some challenge. So I'm going to talk about those in a minute. But before I do that, I want to talk about my expectations of me. These are kind of a couple of things maybe you didn't didn't mention. Um, so one of the things that I think you have the right to expect from me, um, and I liked what Shelby said: courtesy, civility, and respect in my interactions with students. And I think that includes, I believe that includes the interaction we're having right now, the interaction we have through this plastic camera. It's not even a metal camera. But regardless, this time that we spend together in these Zoom meetings, and even if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, that this time that we spend together, that I demonstrate courtesy, civility, and respect. And so it's a good expectation, and I want to commit to do that. Absolutely. Um, but I want to add to that. I think one of the things you have the right to expect from me that I didn't see anyone um, list is honesty, or telling you the truth. And so I want to just kind of tell you what I mean by that quickly. Um, it, I've been teaching this class for a long time, since 2012. And I grew up in a time, in a place, in a culture that doesn't exist anymore, pretty much. I mean, I grew up in a very conservative environment, and I went to college, back when Moses was a young man, many, many years ago. Things were different. Okay. My understanding of truth, based on self-evident truth, like the definition of a woman. My wife and I got married with certain values, you could say, that don't seem to exist in the world today. When it comes to money, when it comes to managing money, when it comes to all of the things that you're going to be bombarded with in your lifetime and in your college experience, the marketing things, the ways that people are going to lie to you to get your money in their pocket, it's unbelievable. And so I believe one of the things that you have the right to expect from me is to tell you the truth to the best of my ability, and without being brutally honest in a way that would be offensive and incourteous and unkind, all of the things that brutal honesty can disregard. I've been brutally honest, and it doesn't usually work very well. So telling the truth in an environment like this, at an institution like this, is challenging. I've worked in corporate America for many years, and telling the truth on Wall Street, it's challenging. Okay. It's like sometimes you have to kind of be a politician, and you have to be careful about what you say. And I have to be careful about what I say. But I want you to know, I believe you have the right to expect that I tell you the truth. And that's what I'm going to try to do this semester. And I hope that doesn't cause me to offend anyone or lose my job. But it is absolutely something I believe, in the context of all the things I'm going to try to teach you this semester, you have the right to expect that I tell you the truth. And so, yeah, that's one. What else? Um, I think you have the right to expect that I have a sense of humor, that I don't take things too seriously, that whatever happens, I'm going to figure it out and we'll deal with it in the most positive and hopefully with a little sense of humor. That's why we have Mr. Cartoon Head. Actually, if you haven't met him, I hope you will. Try to have a sense of humor, and I think that's something that hopefully, if I were in your shoes, I would really want to expect that my instructor, my professor, had a sense of humor, because there's just too many things to laugh about. And so I'm going to do that. And that's something I think you have the right to expect from me. Hopefully that doesn't shock you or surprise you. And I can't think of anything else at the moment. I would say you have the right to expect that I have integrity, but I already talked about telling you the truth. But it's a little different to operate with integrity and to tell the truth. Those are kind of two different things. One of them is much broader and more systemic and comprehensive. And to be a guy who's got integrity and treats you with integrity, I think includes courtesy, civility, respect, and the things that you're looking for. So those are the things that I think you have the right to expect from me that you didn't list. Now, let me talk about a couple of things that aren't really, it's not that they're unworkable, but these are expectations that are definitely going to be challenging for me. So I want to talk about them. And so part of it is just to clarify a few things. So, Stan, I like the way you said it. You were so clear and so absolutely clear. You said clear instructions and feedback, all caps and all exclamation marks. So for me, that is a very good goal, and it's something I think you do have the right to expect from me. But it doesn't really help me. Well, I don't know how to meet that expectation for some students who have a hard time, reading the instructions, doing the assignment, and they need more and more and more. And at some point, it's like, I can't help you. And that's why one of the reasons why we have the GroupMe group is because there are some questions that you want, some feedback that you want that has already been provided or is excessive. What you're wanting is and I'm not saying this is true for you, Stan. I'm just saying in general, this can be one of those expectations that's very difficult for me to meet because your expectations, your definition of clarity and assignment instructions can be sometimes it's impossible for me to hit the mark for every student. But it's a great goal. It's something I continue to work on. Part of it is the way that we clarify things in these Zoom meetings, which you are required to watch. And I'm finding some students don't watch the Zoom meeting and they don't ask the question in GroupMe and they just want to ask me questions. So back to answering our questions, that whole idea of me answering your questions is, it's a great expectation. It's a good, reasonable expectation, but I think we need to put some boundaries on it. So I'm going to share a little bit about my expectations for you in a minute to try to do that, because that can become challenging. For example, I got a question from a student last night at about 10 o'clock. Maybe it was 9, I don't know. But the student did their assignment. It was one screenshot, no commentary, no anything else. And I gave them a 0 and said, look at the instructions, do the assignment, resubmit it. Okay, I'm not going to mention the student's name. If you're listening, you know who you are. And then the student turned around and sent me an email. And the email asked a question that's been answered multiple times already this semester in the Zoom meetings. I didn't answer the question, but I thought, I have an expectation of you. And so I want to share, I want to ask you first, before I share my expectations of you, I want to ask you to share with me, what do you think I have the right to expect from you this semester? As your professor, as a student at the bottom, whether you're a freshman, a junior, a senior, what's the other one, a sophomore? Most of you are juniors and seniors. I think that's pretty much the way it is. But so wherever you are in your journey, what do I have the right to expect from you as a college student who's signed up for this asynchronous course? There are some things I have the right to expect from you. What are they? What do you think they are? Please help me with that now. I'm going to give it a minute, let you answer that in the chat. For those of you who are on the Zoom meeting, I want to know, I need to know, I'm asking you, what do you expect of you? Or what do I have the right to expect of you? So what are those? What do you think that is? So Ignacio says, I have the right to expect you to keep up with your assignments and the information provided in the Zoom lectures. Okay. Stan says responsibility and respect. Again, Stan, that's great, but responsibility is pretty broad. I think we can always pretty much agree on what respect is and what it's not. But responsibility is challenging. To turn in assignments complete and on time, Sarah says. Good. You have the right to expect that we're constantly engaged in class and with assignments. Brittany, that would be so awesome. I do want to expect that. And I think I have the right to expect that you're engaged. Constantly engaged? I'm not sure. Oh, I think you mean constantly engaged in class, like right now, like what you're doing right now. And that's awesome. Thanks. Sahil says, expect us to complete assignments to the best of our ability as well as submitting them on time. Declan says, being self-sufficient, having the ability to interpret instructions on our own, use other resources and our peers to figure things out. Man, that's awesome, Declan. I appreciate that. And I think that would be very helpful. Expect us to read the instructions and submit assignments on time. Thoy, that sounds good. Complete our assignments, David says. Reach out to you if we're unclear, John says. Stan says responsibility includes the completion of assignments in the correct place and completed. Completion of assignments in the correct place and completed. Okay, cool. Regular engagement in class, Parker says. That's a good expectation. I'm going to start to expect that. Do our very best to make the most of this course by completing all assignments on time. This is Julie. By completing all assignments on time, if not early, and asking questions of fellow students in the group me to make sure it hasn't already been addressed. Man, that's a great, I do think, Julie, I have the right to expect that of you. But based on your expectations of me, I want to be clear about that because some students clearly don't know about the group me or would prefer to send me an email with a question that I think honestly is maybe a little premature and maybe even inappropriate. I don't know. You know, I never had access to my professors the way you have access to yours. So again, my world is very different. My world was very different. If I wanted to meet with a professor, it was not that easy. It's not to say they weren't accessible, but I couldn't expect to have the kind of response from them that you get. We didn't even have email back then when Moses was a young man. So anyway, I appreciate that, Julie. Making sure to read instructions and completing the assignments, Jessica. Emma says to read instructions, view the Zoom meetings, check GroupMe for clarity on assignments before asking for more information. And Emma, that is, if I can expect that, if I have the right to expect that from you, that would make my job, that would resolve all of those unworkable expectations right there. So Emma, I think that's really clear and really helpful, and I like that one. Nagan says, Nan, I think it's Nan, I'm sorry, I don't. You have the right to expect us to follow the instructions and do the assignments on your own time because this is an asynchronous class on your own time yet. Also participate and answer questions when asked. And you're doing that today, and I appreciate that. And I think I do have the right to expect that from you. And it's not always easy, but I appreciate today you got, and I appreciate it. I think it's helpful. It's needed. This is again, what you believe I have the right to expect from you. Naleli says, be properly informed before emailing you with questions. Yes, I think that's good. Thank you. Let's see. Get our work done and turn it in by the deadline. Yes, just like you said, we have the right to expect you to be truthful. You also expect us to be truthful and honest with you. Chelsea, I appreciate that. And I think that's an old-fashioned conservative value that we don't always know how to do. But it certainly seems like something worth expecting from one another. And I hope we can expect that from one another this semester together as we work together. I appreciate that. And Jacqueline says to complete our assignments on time and be respectful when reaching out to you for any questions we might have. So that's a great list of things that you believe I have the right to expect of you. And that's a great list. And if I could have the right, if you will give me the permission, as a group to expect have those expectations rather of you as a group, as individuals. That would make my job incredibly manageable and fulfilling and meaningful. Um, and so I'm going to just kind of see if there's anything I need to add, any of my expectations of you. And honestly, I think I don't have any expectations that you didn't list, which speaks volumes about you as a group. Um, and before I ask this last question about unresolved or unmet expectations, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the things that have been recurring expectations that I think you helped me recognize. If we can all agree and be clear, we won't have any problem with unworkable expectations. So, again, when it comes to questions, I want to be responsive to your questions. I want to be better than any professor you have about being accessible and answering your questions and giving clear instructions. So let me tell you how I envision how that could work, how we've set this course up in a way that I think can help us make that a very workable expectation so that you get all of your questions answered and you get all of the input and feedback that you need on every single assignment. And you get it in a responsive, clear, and concise way. I think that sums up a couple of the expectations that you have that could be a little bit challenging. So the way we've set this up, GroupMe, it's your group, it's your space. It's not something I go and spy on you, but I can and will occasionally come in and try to resolve any questions that are stuck or whatever. And the way that happens is you go to GroupMe and you ask questions and other students give you answers, and then everything's beautiful, rainbows and unicorns. And I'm fortunately blessed to be able to do my business during the day and do all the things I have to do without getting a bunch of emails that really are more appropriately answered in a kind of a group context. So that's awesome. The problem comes in when you ask a question in GroupMe and you don't get an answer. And a bigger problem comes in when you and another student ask the same question. And by the time that happens, we begin to create a problem, a communication problem, an issue, a roadblock, something that prevents you from experiencing the best learning experience possible. Here's the solution to that. At any time that you're not getting your questions answered in GroupMe, you have permission, you are encouraged to either send me a text message or an email. And I will get that and I will answer it. And if you tell me, hey, I've asked this question in GroupMe and I can't get an answer, or other students are asking the same question in GroupMe and we're not getting an answer, you send me that email, you send me that text message, and I will, if I'm not in a meeting or I'm not doing something I just can't get away from, I will quit what I'm doing and I will answer your question, and I will answer it probably in GroupMe because that's where you're asking the question. But then I'll go further than that. If it turns out that one of our assignments is creating some confusion, questions, or deductions in terms of, several students are missing the same thing, I'm going to assume that I didn't give you clear instructions. And so in that event, I'm going to not only update the instructions for the next group of students, but I'm going to do a tutorial video to help you get it right this semester during this grading period. And I'm also going to be generous in how I grade if it turns out that I wasn't clear. So hopefully that will help you know that I'm working hard to meet that expectation in terms of not only my response to your questions by email and text message or phone if you call me, but mostly by the way we've set up the course so that there's a resource available for us, for you to get questions answered quickly and in a good, effective way. So I think I'm going to give you guys a chance to chime in if there's anything that I'm missing that I haven't addressed. Let me look through them again. Turning assignments in on time and accurately. So far, you guys have done awesome with very few exceptions. excuse me, and the ones who have had some deductions or feedback where you were missing something, you've fixed it and got it right back to me. And that's just beautiful. And I say thank you. And you get the points. And again, remember, if you turn your assignments in Friday by 3 p.m., you qualify for a 20% bump in that grade. And if you miss something, you also get the benefit of me. It's my responsibility. You have the right to expect that if you turn your assignment in early, you have the right to expect that I'm going to give you that feedback. But if you turn your assignment in, Monday night at 6 p.m., and I'm having dinner with my wife, and maybe we're going to watch a little Alone on Hulu and then go to bed, you don't have the right to expect that I'm going to give you feedback on that assignment in time for you to fix it. So I think most of you recognize that that's a reasonable expectation, that you turn your assignment in early enough. That's why we have this huge deal on Friday. If you turn it in by 3 o'clock, you then have the right to expect that I'm going to give you specific feedback. Now, if you just didn't do the assignment and clearly you're one or two students out of 100 that just didn't read the assignment instructions, I'm not going to say a whole lot. I'm going to say, read the instructions and give it another try. But the point is, if you give it another try and you turn it in by Tuesday at 10 a.m., you still qualify for that 20% bump in points as long as you got, sufficiently completed the assignment. So hopefully that nails our expectations for one another and sets us on a path where we can have an experience this semester that will be fantastic. I hope that's true for you. I believe it's possible. And I think this has been really helpful. So again, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please put in your comments. What do I have the right to expect from you? And more importantly, what do you have the right to expect from me? And that brings us to the last question of the day, which is, at this point, hopefully not, but if there is, it would be super helpful for me to know at this stage in the semester if there are any unresolved expectations, anything that you have expected from me that has been unmet. So unmet, unresolved expectations that you have for me as your professor, as your instructor of personal finance. If there's anything that you feel like you have the right to expect and it's not been met, now is a really good time for you to tell me so I can fix that or at least address it. So I'm going to take a breath and a drink of water. And before we finish today's lesson, this is the last question. So please take a minute, a second or two, think about any expectations that you might have had or that you believe you should have that are not met. This is how I'm able to improve this course every semester. This conversation is what equips me to be responsive to what you're looking for in an asynchronous course. I can't make it better if you don't help me. And this is your opportunity to help me help you and help the students next semester. They've helped you by going through this conversation, painful as it might be. So I'm going to wait and see if there are any unmet expectations, and I'm looking in the chat. The last thing I got was at 10:48 from Jacqueline, and so now I'm looking for a new post, a new chat, a new comment about what you expect, but it's not been met, and it's unresolved, and I'm waiting, and I'm looking, and I'm really hoping nobody says anything here. Thank you, Julie. An affirmation. Another affirmation from Chelsea. So far, so good. That's good to know. I'm happy about that. I was hoping that, but everything's great. Now, don't feel shy about saying something that you do expect that you're not getting, because again, that's the only way I can fix it. So don't be shy if there's something. You don't have to just give me happy words. I like happy words. I like affirmation, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Brittany, Sahil, Chelsea, Julie, and I want to thank everyone. It's 10:59 a.m. And I always try to end at 11 a.m. I know that's a little early. Um, Everything good now? Thank you. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'll hang around. Um, I'm going to keep the Zoom meeting open. I'm going to jump over to this tool that I use to go live, and I'm going to end the live stream, but I'm going to hang out in the Zoom meeting. So if you have any questions or you want to have a conversation, I'm available. And by the way, I didn't really mention office hours. That was a great question and a great expectation. So let me just kind of quickly say that this is kind of the first and best way to have time one-on-one with me, because I will always hang around at the end of the Zoom meeting for any question or any insights you want about personal finance, including your own situation. Although if it's personal, we should set up a new Zoom meeting, which I can easily do, and I will be happy to do. But I would say about that specific request that you have the opportunity to ask me about your own personal financial planning stuff. Typically, I suggest we do that after the course. Your plate is going to be full in terms of building your financial plan and following the instruction that I give you throughout the semester, so that if you have other questions that are related specifically to your financial situation, I'm happy to help you, but we should probably wait until after the semester. And I'll be available. And your plan at Right Capital, which you're going to build this week, which is part of your homework assignment, that will be available to you after the semester ends. So anyone who wants to continue working on your financial plan, you will have access to that at no additional cost for 1 year. So during that 1 year, I'll be available to give you some coaching and have a one-on-one with you to help you. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. So I'm going to hang around in the Zoom meeting, but give me a second. I'm going to jump over to this place right here. And now if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, I'm going to say goodbye. We'll see you next